Hi guys, welcome to Sam Talks Cars. I thought today I'd talk about the Aston Martin V8 Vantage, the old one, so to speak, the one originally released in about 2005 that they made right up till I think about 2018. So not the new Mercedes variant, but the original sort of Aston Martin, Ford, Volvo, Jaguar and whatever parts they could find version of the V8 Vantage. You may have seen a couple of videos of it on the channel. That was my car. I know I went through a lot of cars in 2020. I think I had 5 all in all. That's not a flex, it just shows how stupid I can be at times. But I wanted to talk about the Aston Martin because I think it's a really underappreciated driver's car. But I also wanted to throw together a bit of a buyer's guide because there was a phrase that I learned from the Aston Martin Owners Club, and it's, they just do that. And it's quite annoying when you've spent, best part of £30,000 to £40,000 on your car and little things don't work. So, for example, on my way to take it for its major service before it was sold to its new owner, I took it to my friend James. He works at P&G Automotive in Worcester, I think it is. Not too far a drive, only a couple of hours. This was before lockdown, so perfectly legal to do that. And I stopped, filled it with fuel. It's an Aston Martin, it's a V8. I did that quite a lot. But as I shut the door, it's a pillarless window. And I didn't notice it for a little while, but I felt that I was getting quite cold and it was a bit noisier than usual from the wind. And basically the window couldn't be bothered to go back up to meet the top of the door. So I just had about a 10mm gap where the window just stayed, where it drops down for you to open it. It just stayed there. So I had to pull over into services, open the door, slam it shut. And as I slammed it, the window decided, oh yeah, I'm supposed to go up now. Again, just one of those Aston Martin. They just do that sort of thing. Same as the EML light. So it'll throw an EML light just really for anything, it feels like. If you don't drive it enough, it'll throw an EML light. It says something along the lines of emission system service required. If you drive it too hard and you get the cats quite hot, it'll say emission service required. If you do drive it every day, it might come up. If you don't drive it every day, it might come up. If you look at it funny, it might come up. If you use a type of wax on the paint it doesn't like, it might come on. So you kind of get what I mean. There's a lot of things that your Aston Martin will do that doesn't really make any sense, but you just kind of live with it because you look at it and go, what a beautiful car. And I fell into that trap, I must admit, I bought it. I actually took it part exchange against my Audi RS7, which a car I didn't like very much. And it was a really good car. It had some modifications on that were a little bit questionable. Obviously, it had the headers, a D-cats, a Larini race exhaust, so it was making around 430 to 440 brake horsepower. Sounded evil, like the V8 would absolutely roar. It got loads of attention, and that was great, and it made it more of a driver's car because it had the soundtrack to back up what it was doing. But then you've got the other side of it, where it liked oil almost as much as it liked fuel. He'd put nitron coilovers on it, so it was the most uncomfortable thing I've ever driven in my life. I mean, I've got a Nissan GT-R again now, and it feels like a Maybach or a Rolls-Royce in comparison. Even in R mode, it's a lot softer. It had some 21-inch Nice Essen wheels on it when I took delivery. They looked great. They ruined my life very quickly. So I put some forged V12 Vantage wheels on it. That helped massively. I went for Goodyear Eagle F1 tyres all round, brand new. They were really nice. The forged wheels, a lot lighter than standard as well. So I lost a little bit of steering feel with that, actually, because the wheels were a bit lighter. But that was one of my favourite characteristics of the V8 Vantage, is the heavy steering, the heavy gearbox, and sort of the heavy pedals, like the clutch. You needed 2 legs, really. But it just had that really nice feel to it. The brake pedal, for example, was really nice and firm. And I've had to install an entire Alcon Super Kit to my GTR to replicate that pedal feel. That's how much I liked it. There was no initial travel, there's no lag. It was sort of immediately as you start to modulate that brake pedal, you've got a really nice weighting to it. And it's quite confidence-inspiring, which is really ironic because the brakes on the car were absolutely crap. You get 355mm Brembos up front and 330mm Brembos on the rear. And they look tiny. Even in a 19-inch wheel, these brake discs look so small. And I don't think it helps that the caliper isn't very big. I think they're 4 pistons up front. I think they're 4 at the rear. They might be a 6, I'm not sure off the top of my head, but they're a very, very small caliper. They're even smaller than a Porsche 18Z caliper from Brembo. Really, really small. And I found on a couple of twisty roads, I was doing a bit of fast road driving, I was cooking the Brembos really, really quickly. And it was just something that always frustrated me about the car. Because I remember Chris Harris joking about it years ago when he did a road test against like a Porsche Cayman. He's like, is our aluminium heavier than everybody else's? Because the Aston Martin Vantage is primarily made of aluminium, and yet it weighs in at a whopping 1,570 kilos. And I just can't get over that because it's a really, really small car. I mean, I lived with it as my daily driver for about 4 months, and I either had to take a person with me or things, not both, because the boot space can fit about 2 small rucksacks in it. The passenger seat can fit a human in it just about, but then you've got a massive dashboard in front of you, so they can't really see much unless they lift the seat up. And there's a little shelf behind the driver's seat, which you might get a really, really thin golf bag, perhaps. But I don't think widthways golf clubs are actually fit, so I didn't really work out what that was for either. There were lots of things wrong with that car, but I liked it anyway. I mean, the boot floors on them, mine was luckily it didn't, but the boot floor can leak. I'm not sure how the water gets in, but it comes in down the side of the boot lid, I believe. You end up with a spongy wet carpet, so that's not so good. Again, if I can just go back to the weight, the B7 RS4 that I've had a couple of weighed in at 1,650 kilos, and that's a saloon cabriolet or estate car. So a 4-door family estate car only weighs 80 kilos more. And you've got to remember, from factory, a 4.3 litre Vantage only makes 380 brake horsepower. So it's really not a fast car. It's one of those where it's a good car to be seen in. It's not a great car to drive, if I'm honest. If mine didn't have the full 2013 Vantage S facelift kit on it, for example, with all the carbon fibre, if it didn't have the exhaust, I hated the coilovers, but even still, the car handled better on them once I put some smaller wheels on it. It was a great car to drive, but I just don't think in standard trim it would be anywhere near engaging enough to warrant the expense. I mean, most V8 Vantages now are, I will admit, quite good value, but you're spending sort of £25,000 on them. And they're now getting to that unfortunate price point where people are happy to spend £25,000 on them, but they're not going to spend any more money to maintain them. So, for example, I got quite lucky before Brexit. I went on Autodoc and I ordered 4 genuine Brembo brake discs for my car to sort of as like a little sweetener for the new buyer. And that cost me like £250 delivered to my door from Germany. So there are parts available without the Aston Martin tax, but I would always encourage someone to go to a specialist rather than going to an Aston Martin dealer, because you're paying, I think it's about 120 quid an hour labour. It might even be more than that. It's an offensive amount of money for little tiny things. Hence why they just do that became the phrase. If it throws an EML light, just take it out for a good drive and hopefully it'll go off again. But I had a few little niggles, again, that I didn't like with the car. It was terrible on fuel. It was terrible on oil. It was very slow, despite making a lot of noise. It was very heavy, and I keep going back to that point. The weight was the worst part for me, because it was the weight, that was arguing against the brakes. So if I'm doing a twisty, fast bit of road driving and I'm trying to heel toe, I'm actually struggling to heel toe because I'm pressing the brake pedal so hard, because obviously the travel's getting longer and longer as those little 355 mils up front are getting hot, because you're asking 1.6 tons nearly to stop on a very, very small brake disc. And then you've got the little bits around the bodywork of the aluminium oxidation. So you get some on the doors, some on the wings. I think you get some on the rear 3/4 if you're not careful. I think mine was starting to do it around the door lock. Mine was wrapped, so that was another annoyance for me, is I could see where it needed work, but then it would be, let's take the door off, let's remove all the wrap, let's have it painted, let's put it back in it, and it just wasn't worth it. You get oxidation in the headlights as well, so you get a lot of steam anytime it's cold, which in England is a lot. And it's just a lot of things, they just do that. Really started to irritate me, actually, where I sat there and thought, what a beautiful, beautiful car, but I just hate it. I don't want to drive it anymore. And I'm not trying to be too biased, but I'm trying to sort of let people know how I feel about the car. I mean, you know, I've had a couple of RS4s, I've had a supercharged one, I've had 2 GTRs, I've had an RS7. So I'm quite well-rounded in different cars and different experiences. And I will 100% say that the Aston Martin is up there as one of the best driver's cars. But it has to be a weekend toy, and you have to have that open mindset of it's going to break all the time. It might be little silly things, but it's going to break all the time. And you've got to have a manual gearbox, in my opinion, because the sport shift is terrible. And again, I know everybody says it, but it's lurchy, it's slow, it's unpleasant, it eats clutches. It's like an E46 M3 with SMG, but even not a very good SMG. It really is a bad system that sort of Aston Martin developed and revised very lightly. So in a 4.3 Vantage, you're only getting Sport Shift 1. You're getting the original, so the worst. If you get a Vantage S, DBS, DB9, that sort of... Actually, no, not DB9, but DBS, things like that, or a V12 Vantage, you're getting Sport Shift 2 and 3. And it improved slightly over the years, but it was never good. It was never a good gearbox. Clutches as well. Clutches have a propensity for just going bang one day. And I saw the bill for mine from Aston Martin Chichester, and it was only about 10 or 15,000 miles before I took delivery, and it was a £3,000 clutch bill. So you've got to bear that in mind as well, that it's a £25,000 car, but unfortunately it still has the bills of a £90,000 car, because I think that's what they were new. They were 90, 100 grand back in 2005, 2006. So it's a Herculean amount of money. So you've just got to bear that in mind. But the interior, if it's well looked after, is a really, really nice place to be. And one thing I can never fault my Aston Martin for is I felt incredibly special in it. You know, you can sit there and pretend to be Bond. That's not really my angle on things. But, you know, you stick on a barber jacket, you go out for a drive, you turn up at a pub or a restaurant, and you get that attention. And it's not the attention you'd get in a Lamborghini or a Ferrari where people secretly hate you. It's more admiration. Anytime I turned up at a junction on an A-road, and I wish I was joking, people would flash me and let me out. I barely ever waited in my car for anything. You know, if I wanted to park somewhere, people would just let me park. If I wanted to pull out of a junction, people would just let me. There was a lot of admiration and respect on the road, and that's something that I'll always miss about the Aston Martin, is it was really well received and really well loved by people. So I hope I've not, you know, gone too emotional or too chit-chatty about this, but I just wanted to provide a few sort of pros and cons. So the pros are, you know, it's got a really nice feel, really nice heavy steering, the gearbox is nice, the pedal feels good, the interior quality is stunning, and the fact the car is absolutely beautiful. But they eat fuel, they eat oil. They come factory on Bridgestone Potenza tyres. They are awful. I would honestly recommend some Goodyear Eagles or some Michelin Pilot Sport 4Ss, maybe even some Cup 2s, because the Bridgestones just are not a good tyre. You'll reach the limit of the tyre much before you start pushing the chassis of the car. Again, aluminium oxidisation. The car's very heavy despite being made of aluminium. Misty headlights. Try and avoid sport shift because it's bad, and clutches cost like £1 billion. So, you know, if you're in the market for one, I hope this helps. Feel free to give me a message if you want to discuss further. But yeah, hope that helps. Cheers, guys.